Dad follows girl to school with drone, discovers alarming situation. The guard was confused. What was the little girl trying to say? She was waving at her. Was she greeting her? The children were always playing silly games. The tired crossing guard waved back at the little girl. She'd completely missed the signal. Now it was too late. There was somebody watching her from the back. Sarah Bennett woke up to the soft glow of dawn streaming through her bedroom window. It was another crisp morning and she knew that her daily trek to school awaited her. She threw on her favorite backpack, kissed her mother goodbye, and headed out the door. The journey to school was familiar, a routine she'd followed for years. 9-year-old Sarah's morning routine was always the same. She'd grab her backpack, kiss her mother Lisa on the cheek, and then head out the front door to walk to school in California. Her dad wasn't usually there, but when he was, it was always a treat. It was a peaceful walk through their quiet suburban neighborhood, and Sarah had done it countless times. However, this particular morning was about to take a chilling turn. As 8-year-old Sarah walked down the tree-lined streets of her quiet suburban neighborhood, she couldn't help but feel a sense of serenity. Her father, Thomas Bennett, had always been concerned about her safety. It was this concern that led him to make an unusual purchase the night before, a sleek new drone equipped with a high-definition camera. What were his plans with it? Thomas had decided it was time to take an extra step to ensure his children's security on their way to school. He programmed Sarah's school address on it. He also saved a map route that would track Sarah to and from her school. His wife thought it was a bit much, but he was a technology fundy and wanted to make the most out of modern tech. Unbeknownst to Sarah, her father Thomas had recently purchased a new drone for what he believed to be safety purposes. He knew the world wasn't as safe as it used to be. He had a deep-seated concern for his children's well-being, and the drone was his latest attempt to keep them safe. Would he be able to use it safely in the real world? As Sarah embarked on her usual journey to school, Thomas activated the drone, which silently soared into the sky, ready to follow her every step. It took him a few attempts to control it. He'd only used it a few times before. According to the law, one has to have a permit to fly a drone in certain areas. Thomas watched as Sarah made her way down the sidewalk through the live feed from the drone. The device hovered silently, tracking her every step. He was relieved to see his daughter progressing safely along her route. The crisp morning air, the sound of birds chirping, and the distant hum of traffic all added to the beautiful and peaceful atmosphere. But something was about to disrupt the perfect little morning in the suburbs. Sarah reached the school safely just like any other day. Her friends greeted her with smiles and she waved back, her youthful innocence keeping her unaware of the unfolding events. The children were already happy that their school day was beginning, but Thomas, peering at the drone's camera feed, noticed something strange. What was happening at the school? Sarah walked to the entrance where her friends were standing. The school had a strict policy that no children should loiter outside the school fence. However, as Sarah approached the intersection where the school crossing guard usually stood, something caught her father's attention. The crossing guard, Mrs. Anderson, was acting strangely, but what had gotten her so worked up? The crossing guard, Mrs. Adriana Anderson, was a shy lady, but she always did her duty with precision. There were never any incidents on her watch, but she was also working on a busy road, so it was a tiring job. She wasn't focusing on the traffic or helping children cross the street. Instead, she was frantically waving at someone or something off to the side. Down at the school's entrance, the crossing guard was acting unusually. She seemed to be waving at someone near the school gates, and Thomas squinted at the screen, recognizing the figure approaching. It was his daughter. She had just entered the school. It seemed as though she was talking to someone. There were a few other children around. Thomas's heart began to race as he adjusted the drone's camera to get a closer look. He zoomed in and his eyes widened with disbelief as he realized the person Mrs. Anderson was waving at was his daughter. Sarah was talking to one of her classmates. She was a sweet girl who was always punctual. Why was she wasting time talking to friends outside? Thomas couldn't understand why Mrs. Anderson would be so concerned about his daughter at that moment. The drone's camera showed her standing in the street looking distressed. She seemed to be gesturing towards something or someone behind her. The entrance of the school had a few large potted plants in the front. Whatever was behind them wasn't visible. Sarah reached the school entrance and Thomas held his breath, fearing something ominous was unfolding. He saw a few other children walk away from her. There were also some teachers standing further in, but they didn't seem to suspect anything. Mrs. Anderson's frantic gestures continued and she pointed urgently behind her toward a nearby alleyway. What was the crossing guard trying to say? The crossing guard was oblivious to Sarah's frantic attempts to get her attention. It was a dire situation unfolding before her eyes. Would she understand the child's signs? Mrs. Anderson's heart raced as she watched the strange woman guide the child out of the school grounds. At first, she didn't realize what was happening, but now she knew she was right. As realization dawned on the crossing guard Adriana, she abruptly turned, sensing something was terribly wrong. The woman accompanying Sarah was not her mother. Panic surged through her, and without hesitation, guard Adriana sprinted toward the girl. She dropped her stop sign on the floor while running. Would she get to little Sarah in time? The strange woman grasped Emma's hand tighter, realizing she'd been caught. She'd almost gotten away with it. Nobody had seen her take the child out of the school. Panic and fear painted her face as she attempted to flee, dragging the little girl behind her. Sarah watched in horror as the drama unfolded before her eyes. Thomas, still remotely operating the drone, quickly assessed the situation and decided to intervene. He was in shock but knew that he had to act fast. With swift precision, he maneuvered the drone towards the fleeing woman, capturing her every move on camera. He wasn't going to let her go. Thomas tried to hit the woman with the drone. He got the back of her head a couple of times. She tried to fight back but couldn't look behind her and ran. The devout father was impressed with his own drone control. The drone's propellers hummed, keeping pace as Thomas pursued the kidnapper. Would he be able to get her down? Thomas chased after the woman for 10 minutes, but he couldn't follow anymore. His drone was losing power. He had to stop and turn back, but he couldn't damage his drone any further. As they neared a tunnel, the woman made a desperate move. She darted into the dark, foreboding passage, and before Thomas could react, she'd vanished from view. The drone's camera was unable to penetrate the tunnel's depths, and Thomas was left with a sinking feeling of helplessness. He walked over to where his drone was and headed to Sarah's school where her mother was. He didn't catch the culprit, but he had some great pictures and close-ups of her, and there was evidence. Sarah's parents, Lisa and Thomas, reunited with their daughter at the school entrance. They hugged their daughter. Sarah said, "I tried to tell Auntie Adriana that it wasn't you, Mommy," the child said. The relief that washed over them was palpable. Where was the crossing guard in all of this? Then they heard sirens and realized what was happening. Sarah hugged her parents tightly, tears in her eyes, grateful to be safe. The school staff and other parents had gathered, all visibly shaken by the attempted abduction that occurred under their watch. The principal said, "We can't even leave our front gate open for 5 minutes anymore." The authorities were called and the school wasted no time in beefing up its security measures. It was a mistake that had cost them their reputation. Surveillance cameras were installed at every corner and security personnel were posted at key locations. This way, nobody could sneak past and pretend to be a parent of one of the students. They had a governing board meeting to see what they could do. It was decided to have updated photographs of all parents and students on the system. Parents too were on high alert, ensuring their children's safety as they arrived and left the school. Some parents wanted to homeschool their children. Was this going to be enough for them? In the aftermath of that fateful morning, the community came together, united by their determination to keep their children safe. Thomas might not have been able to capture the kidnapper, but his drone had played a crucial role in foiling the abduction attempt. He'd already handed in a copy of the video footage to the authorities. The incident served as a stark reminder that danger could strike when least expected and that vigilance and quick thinking could make all the difference. Thomas and his wife laughed at how she made a joke about his drone. "Who's laughing now?" Thomas playfully joked with his wife. They realized their children's safety was no laughing matter. As for Sarah, she continued to walk to school every morning, but now she did so with a newfound awareness of the world's unpredictability. Either one of her parents always walked with her. They wanted her to grow up without feeling like the world was scary and bad. It was a difficult job, but they tried their best to bring magic back into their daughters' lives. Sarah was aware of what happened to her, and it made her want to start self-defense classes. Her parents were proud of their little soldier. She held her parents' hands a little tighter, and her smile, though unchanged, carried with it the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, there were heroes willing to go to great lengths to protect those they loved.